Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, Life, Law, Bin. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. It is a special episode indeed. All of the episodes are special, but this is extra special because we have our second IFBM coordinator who will be introducing herself and telling us a bit about herself today. So I'm especially excited to introduce you to Sonalakshi Naidu. Affectionately, we call her Sonali. So, Sonali, thank you so much for joining us. And it's obviously a pleasure for you to be part of the IFBM team.
Yeah, thank you for having me here, Nia. So hi, I'm Sonalakshi, and as Nia said, I go by Sonali. I'm from India. I'm from Mumbai in India. A fun fact about me is I am the go-to person for math queries in my group. I spent a long time in my childhood studying or trying to learn mental math or quick math, as you would call it, and I still get texts from my friends asking me to double check their interest calculations every now and then. Um, another fun fact is actually today is it marks me being in the UK for 5 years. I
Oh,
came to the UK on the 17th of September 2018, so it's exactly 5 years today.
okay. Wow. That is good. And I love the fact that you know our style of videos, you jump straight into the fun facts. So that's excellent. And happy 5 year anniversary in the UK. Obviously it will still be the 5 year anniversary by the time this video is released. So I have to ask you, why did you apply to become IFBM's volunteer coordinator?
So the first year that I moved to the UK, that's 2018, I just used a year to try to find out stuff because I didn't really know much about the practicalities of working in the legal system in the UK at that point. On my second year, the first meeting I had with a career advisor, and I told her I want to be a barrister, she told me I should question that thought again, especially because I was an international student. I wouldn't have been here or done the things I've done, which we'll discuss through the course of this video, if I hadn't met someone who also was an international student and well has motivated me and supported me, formed a supportive community through this process. So when I saw IFBM was recruiting a volunteer, I wanted to be in a position to help other people from a similar background because not everyone takes us seriously.
That is absolutely true. How many naysayers do we have in terms of people who tell us you can't do the job because you're an international applicant? And I think it's so, so, so powerful to have inspiration through mentorship, to have someone that you can talk to that is also going through something similar. And it's true, you put it perfectly. You put it perfectly when you said they're not there's some people that don't take us seriously. That's true. And it's always the same thing over and over. How can you be a barrister here and you're an international applicant? So I do think that, we welcome you and we welcome your experiences to help us to continue to build a supportive community. Now let's turn to look a bit at your legal journey. I do note that you have a first degree in electronics and telecommunications, communications engineering. So what made you decide to pursue law? Why did you decide to pursue law?
As much as I would like to say it was a very well thought plan right from the beginning, it wasn't. I made this decision in about a span across a week during my final year of engineering. So at the time, I was working on a project, which was my thesis project. I was creating a guidance system for visually impaired. And one of my professors asked me to look into the possibility of patenting it. And at the same time, on the other side, I was trying to take part in campus placements, decide what I was going to do next, since that was the final year. And the one thing I noticed that there was a lot of jobs coming up were moving towards either the software side, which is just coding, or people moving into consultancy. If I wanted to do a further degree in engineering, a master's, and go into research, I would be stuck in a very specific area for a very long time. And at that time, when I was exploring the process of patenting the project, well, I realized my project couldn't be patented, but it just opened another door to me. Firstly, I quite like the performative element that I would have as at that point I was looking at it as an advocate, as they're called in India, which is equivalent to a barrister here. So the performative element of having to use your skills to convince someone to make a decision in your favor. The second is the variety. So even if you're stuck, even if you stuck's the wrong word, even if you decide to specialize in a particular area, there's still a variety of experiences. There's different types of cases. Every day is a different day as an advocate or as a barrister. And I think lastly, I quite liked the idea of being self-employed, that I didn't have to meet numeric targets just set by someone in order to prove my worth. So that this all happened in I think across a span of a week, and I decided that yes, that is a career I want to do. I want to pursue law.
That's excellent. It's funny how life works, you know. You were directed to law through trying to patent something, which is, you know, inherently kind of like a legal terminology. So that's
Mhm.
interesting how life works. What do you think that your background in obviously electronics and telecommunications, communication engineering brings to a career at the bar?
I think there's three things that I look at as being transferable from that background in engineering to a career in law. And the first is problem solving and the way you approach problems. As an engineer, possibly you'd have a left-hand side and a right-hand side of an equation, and you're working on each of those sides to get them to balance out each other. And similarly, in the law, you have the law on one side, and you have your facts on the other side, and you're trying to weave them in together. So through my experience in engineering, I learned the best way to do it is to take small chunks of the problem, solve them, and then put them to see how it fits in the bigger picture. The second thing I would say is attention to detail. Um, like the project I discussed, I did quite a bit of coding for that project, and a misplaced semicolon in a code is not a fun thing, because you're then spending the rest of the day searching for that one error that you made. There are programs now that can help you with it, but when we didn't have access to it at that time. So that attention to detail is crucial, and I think it transfers quite well in law, where again, attention to detail as to how that sentence is constructed, what that particular word means in the context is very important. And lastly, I think it's just general technical experience. There are some fields like, say, intellectual property, in information technology. There's with the rise of social media coming into every sphere of our lives, I think there's a lot more going on in terms of legal action. And I think it puts me in a slightly better position to try and understand the underlying technicalities in these situations.
I think that those are absolutely apt transferable skills. I was just thinking about the linkages, you know, between obviously your engineering background and law, and it makes perfect sense. It may not be something that someone may think of immediately, but as soon as you explain it, it's like, oh yes, that works perfectly. It's almost like yin and yang. Now, Sonali, you then went on to pursue an LLB in India, an LLM in intellectual property and information laws, and you also have a MA law, which is a UK qualifying degree, and obviously the LLM in bar practice course, very well qualified. Now, this period of study, you know, it lasted from 2015 to 2022. Please tell us, how did you remain motivated?
Well, I won't say I was constantly motivated and constantly on top of everything, but I think at each stage that I was just working towards my goal. And for me personally, I like a challenge, and I do, if there is a challenge set in front of me, I want to overcome that challenge. So that's what motivated me to keep going and try and get over the next mountain as they will climb higher and higher. So it's that peak that's been in my vision, and I'm just going towards it. Yeah, there are days where you just want to give up, but take a break, come back at it.
Definitely my mantra, go get some sleep. Go get a
Yes.
rest. Go walk in the park. Go do something, and then come back refreshed. Okay, so we're just going to pivot slightly now and take a look at your legal work experience. You are a highly qualified individual, and I know that you are currently a county court advocate. How do you think that this particular role would assist you with obtaining pupillage?
So I look at this role helping me obtain pupillage by helping me develop three key skills. The first is advocacy. So as a county court advocate, I'm in court every day. I'm before judges and chambers, making submissions on behalf of my clients every single day. It's helped me develop a more relaxed style of advocacy, something I'd received feedback on in the past. And by continually refining my skills, I think every day I become a better advocate. The second is it's been developing and refining my ability to think on my feet. Once you're in code, there's oftentimes situations that you hadn't expected arise. You may have a question from a judge on something you haven't had instructions on. The opposing side may raise certain documents or provide new information that you had, again, no previous instructions of. So, in those circumstances, you really have to think on your feet and decide what you can say to minimize any detrimental impact to your client. And I think the last is just general interpersonal or communication skills. So, you're firstly every day talking to solicitors, your professional clients, but on the other hand, you're also speaking with the opposing party. For in my situation, they are mostly defendants who appear in person, and in that circumstance, you're talking to a person who has no knowledge of the legal system. They are the opposing side, so you have to make sure that you're able to communicate with them, explain to them their options as well, and then explain how the court procedure works to them because they aren't represented. So it's these people from very different backgrounds you encounter, and it helps develop interpersonal skills.
And these to me are all integral, in developing a career at the bar. I think you have a massive head start, really, um, by doing this role. Is almost like you are, emulating or already kind of performing that role, as an advocate, a barrister, that kind of thing. So you will have a massive head start if you already hone these skills before getting in, um, obtaining pupillage and beginning your career at the bar. Now, I know you have numerous legal roles which were undertaken in India, and I think this would be a particularly interesting point, especially for international applicants who are logging on and viewing today. So you have these numerous legal roles undertaken in India. Do you have any challenges demonstrating that your work experience acquired in India has critical transferring skills to the Bar of England and Wales?
So the first thing I had to do was obviously try and assess what skills I would require at the Bar of England and Wales, and then analyze my experience in India and put them into context. Now, that's the important part because in the UK, so you have, for example, mini pupillages or vacation schemes. But in India, we used to, when I was doing my LLB, and it's quite common for people to do internships, which can be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So you are working on real cases in real time in India. And I think it's important if you do something like that to put it into context. Because if you use just a word internship and say, well, I drafted something, Chambers here is going to look at it and think, well, you've done it in the context of maybe a mock case or something, or an assessment as you may do on a mini pupillage. So what I've resorted to doing is actually making it clear the context in which I did those activities so that the appropriate weightage is given to it.
I think that's unbelievably helpful because I think that's something that international applicants grapple with. Some people wonder if it's going to be experience that's going to be accepted at the bar. And, in my experience, it's all about, as you said, when you rate your applications, you convey the importance of the skills that you have grasped from that role. If you can't convince yourself that you have obtained critical skills, critical transferable skills in that role, you can't convince a panel. And oftentimes, often, if not always, in our roles in our respective home countries, there are always skills that you can transfer to the Bar of England and Wales. It is something that if you put it into context and you explain, you can easily do that. Now, Sonali, I also know that you are enrolled as an advocate under the Bar Council in India. Can you explain the benefit that that would have to a chambers in the UK?
So, as an advocate, I am registered with one of the bar councils in India, which was in my state. And what that permits me is it's essentially a license to practice there. When I decided to actually come to the UK to pursue law, one of the reasons was that a lot of Indian companies, when they had agreements with foreign parties, were initially using London as their seat of arbitration, just because of how it was a faster system, more effective. But in recent times, I've heard a lot of good things about the arbitration center now, which is in Delhi. So there is, and given the status of India as an emerging market, there is a high volume of trade that happens between India and parties, let's say in England and Wales. And if the law that's subject to those contracts is in India, and Chambers is representing someone from here, they may find it beneficial to have someone who has one knowledge of both systems, and secondly, also the authority to practice in the other country, let's say India here. I've also noticed a lot of chambers are trying to expand their international presence, and a good way to to expand your international presence is actually have members who are authorized or have experience in that area. So I think in those ways, my license as an advocate in India would be beneficial to chambers.
I agree. And we do live in a globalized environment, and often it may be a matter that is cross jurisdictional. It would be heaven like to have a barrister within your set that actually is called in that particular jurisdiction because it means you don't actually have to shop around for someone else. You can do all this work in house. So I think that it is definitely beneficial. No, this everything here has been so interesting, but I am very keen now to discuss with you your challenges as an international applicant. We face some acute and unique challenges and hurdles. So I'm keen for us now to discuss that. So as an international aspiring barrister, can you name three of the most significant challenges that you have encountered in your pursuit of a career at the bar?
So the first one would be the challenge of getting experience when you're subject to visa restrictions. So I was in the UK I studied three courses which were a year long each, and each of them during my education had a restriction where I could only work 20 hours a week during term time. Unfortunately, as they were all master's level courses, the summer vacation was also considered term time for me. So I had to seek out experiences where I'm able to get the skills I need within that limit. So, for example, when I was studying my last course, which was the bar course, I was doing a pro bono unit. And unfortunately, any work on that unit also counted towards the 20-hour restriction. I was also working part time with Citizens Advice. So I had to have a timer on every time I was either working or I was doing pro bono work just to ensure that I was sticking to my 20-hour time limit. And there are not many employers here who would, especially legal employment that is available to people who are restricted to 20 hours a week. The second is, and I think every international student right now watching it has already will be yelling at the screen, is demonstrating my commitment to the Bar of England and Wales. Well, I think this question does not need to be asked given the efforts we take to come here, study, spend time, money, when I'm already qualified in another jurisdiction. It's a question that's often come up. And given my experience and the fact that I have the ability to practice there, that's questioned even more. And the fact that I have no as such familial ties here. I think the last one is something we touched upon earlier, which is just constantly like having that motivation to constantly keep going when everyone's constantly doubting you.
Agreed. Definitely, these songs to be challenged. These are all challenges that all of us, if not many of us, face. And I do recall the visa restrictions, limiting my working hours, and juggling how many things you can do, and
Mhm.
really taking a good note, really and truly. And also that commitment. We pour a lot of money into this dream, and we see it as a means to an end. We're working towards a goal, and we're actually putting our money where our mouth is. That's serious, because if we actually had to get back every cent that we that we spent, oh boy, I think our bank accounts would be looking very healthy and happy at this point. That's the truth. Now, how did you overcome these challenges, or how were you in the process of overcoming these challenges?
So the first was with the visa conditions. As I said, I had a constant timer on while I was doing it. I was really lucky in that I was working with Citizens Advice who were quite understanding about my situation, and I made sure that my contract with them was only for I think it was about 15 hours a week, if I'm not mistaken, of 16, because I knew I had to only spend an hour possibly each week on pro bono, but I needed to have that buffer time. I think if you are in a similar situation, it may be wise to consider, and you have multiple jobs, it may be wise to consider having maybe even if it's just an hour, because I know 20 hours is a short time, but having that buffer time, because if you spill over from one of your, say, jobs, you don't want it to ultimately take you over 20 hours, because that can affect any future applications you have. And the second thing was with demonstrating commitment. Now, this is something that has been in the works for the past few runs. And I think every time I go through it, I realize how I can better present myself in response to that application. Well, I think one of the good things is having a mentor, and I have you, Nia, as my mentor who's been helping me um, to look in on myself more and realize that there's reasons that I didn't think showed my commitment to being here. But in discussions with my mentor, sometimes it's helpful to have to read your reasons out to someone and have them question you on it. And then you realize, oh, there were also all these other things. And I think the last is motivation. And I think one of the biggest things in that is having people around you who are in a similar situation. Because if you're in a batch with everyone who, well, isn't an international student, you see them getting jobs and you see them progressing, and you start to doubt yourself, thinking there's something wrong with you, when you don't really fully absorb the fact is that, well, you have a visa restriction, they don't. You have a timer on your visa, you have only 6 months left in the country, they don't. So why would a firm pour all their resources into a job like, let's say, a paralegaling job for someone who's going to possibly leave in 6 months, as opposed to someone who doesn't have a right to stay? So the important thing is to have those friends and have that community and that network. So recently at the IFBM social, it was so nice to meet everyone and realize that I think we spoke for hours and we realized we all are in the same boat. When when individually each of us thought, oh, no one else had had this experience, So I think it's important to have that network to keep you motivated.
Oh my goodness, I concur because sometimes you can sit there and think, oh, I'm the only person that's going through this. If you're an international applicant and you're watching, you are not the only person, and we encourage you to come to the socials, come to any events we have, the pupillage workshops, anything, come because you'd realize that there are actually a lot of people who are in that boat. And let's just be very candid about it. It's not an equal playing field. I'm very pleased that you actually noted that. Um, I'm actually pleased that you actually noted that it's a situation where you can't compare yourself to others. You have a timer. And it is a possibility that you may be refused leave to continue to remain. You also, you have a timer. You also have to get things done in a certain way. You have to run behind applications, find the money for applications all the time. And it means that certain priorities may have to be prioritized over other things. It means you might have to take a role that you wouldn't necessarily take in order to pay the bills, in order to acquire enough savings. So I'm glad that you would have definitely still mentioned that. Now, you know me, I love a bit of positivity. So I have to ask you, as an international aspiring barrister, name two of your proudest moments in pursuing the bar.
I think the first would be actually getting a scholarship from the Inner Temple to do my bar course. It completely covered my fees and made it possible for me to go ahead and pursue that course. And I was especially proud of it because I did not want to apply for it because I had this pre-thought that, oh, I'm an international student. Of course, they don't want to give it to me. And as I said, if it wasn't for that motivation by my friend, I wouldn't have applied for it. And the second was just being called to the bar, although I did miss out on my outstanding by a few marks. I was proud to be called, especially after I had the highest mark across, I think, 5 modules on my cohort.
We have to talk about the good stuff. I'm glad that you highlighted that. I'm glad that you mentioned the bar course scholarship. That's a fantastic achievement, as well as being called to the bar. And obviously, I'm not going to let this opportunity pass. So I do know that you have a BPC exhibition scholarship from the Honorable Society of Inner Temple. Provide three top tips that you would share with persons, particularly international applicants, who are interested in applying for a bar course scholarship?
I think the first thing you need to do is look at each of the ins and they have criteria on there, they have the procedure out there. So I chose the Inner Temple because everyone there was guaranteed an interview. I believe Inner Temple and Middle as well. Everyone who applies is guaranteed an interview. And given my, well, non-traditional background, I thought I was more confident in my ability to make an impression in an interview than on paper, just because maybe my background didn't come out as well on paper. And so I think that is a decision, that is a factor that you need to take in your decision. The other factor will also be how they assess how much you need and what funds available are. The second is, I think something we've discussed before, is assessing your skills from every experience you had, whether that was in the UK, whether that was in a legal job, you were in a fast food restaurant. Well, you learned to work under pressure. You were managing your schedule to meet your target. So every experience has something that can be transferred, um, that has a skill that is transferable to a career at the bar. And lastly, is actually just that piece of application itself. One is to make sure it's structured well enough so that each of those points comes through it. And the second is to ensure you've proofread it. Write it, rewrite it, put it in a drawer for a few days, and then look back in it. Because when you're looking at the same piece of writing over and over again, your brain's filling the gaps as you read. And sometimes you just don't quite realize you made a typo or there's a word that's written twice, so proofread after giving yourself some time off of it.
Excellent tips, and we know that though that scholarship application season will be
Mhm.
upon us very soon. So definitely you should take that into consideration. Lastly, I always have to end on some kind of inspirational note. What would you say to those international aspiring barristers who are keen to pursue a career at the bar?
So there's three things I would say. The first is to remind yourself why you're here. You know that, and you need to remember it because that's what's going to keep you motivated. The second is developing a network. Reach out to people, get a mentor, apply for our scheme if you don't already have a mentor and you are someone with an international background. Or there's various other schemes we've promoted across our social media. So there's a COMBA mentoring scheme, there's one in planning and public law. And at the same time, under the point of network, I would say also seek out and try and network with people in your situation. So other aspiring barristers with an international background. Again, this can be just done through maybe finding someone on LinkedIn and thinking you have something in common with them, shoot them a message, um, or attend socials like the ones we've had. And I found it really encouraging to have this supportive network because as we discussed earlier, you realize you're not the only person in that situation. And I think the last is just may the luck be in your favor. Because with all of this, no matter how much you put in, how much you're able to do practically, there is some amount of luck involved.
Yes, I think on a note to end and just to remind people, all our viewers, greatness requires you to come out of your comfort zone. So you may probably have heard Sonali say, shoot a message to someone, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, suppose they air you. And suppose they do air you, but what if they actually respond? You don't know if they're going to respond, and you don't know if that could be a budding friendship, a budding legal connection. So don't just sit at home and really feel sorry for your situation. Come out, reach out to people, reach out to us, come along to the events, message people, connect with people on LinkedIn, and do really try to network and talk to people and really build important connections and relationships. Well, Sonali, it was a pleasure to have you on the channel today. Very, very informative, very insightful, and I'm sure that you would be a beacon of inspiration to those also watching. So I just want to take this opportunity for thanking you for setting aside time out of your busy schedule to record with us and to share this information.
Thank you firstly for getting me on board as a volunteer at IFBM, and secondly for giving me access to this platform. And well, even if it helps one person, that's great. And if anyone watching is in a similar situation, and if you're afraid to reach out to anyone else on LinkedIn, you can possibly just reach out to me.
Oh, yes, yes, you can. And you guys know where to find me. You are certainly deserving of the role, and you are certainly deserving of being on the platform. So it's always a pleasure, guys. Until we see you, guys and gals, until we see you next time, take care of yourself, and we hope to see you on the next video. See you guys later. Bye bye.